Page 141. Exercise 4.
The New Boy by Martin Hobbs. A boy is cycling down a high street on a warm September morning. He's wearing a sweater and his new second-hand school jacket, but he feels cold. He looks at the shops, the fast food restaurants, the supermarkets, the charity shops. They are all similar but different to the shops he knows. Even the sun is strange and new here. It is low in the sky and hurts his eyes. He starts thinking about his hometown and remembers his road and the tree outside his house and... Hey, look out! Joseph stops suddenly. The driver of a car is red-faced and angry. You're on the wrong side of the road, mate. Sorry, Joseph says. Just be careful, says the man, and he drives away. Joseph shakes his head. It's a bad start to the day. 10 minutes later, Joseph is riding through the park when he hears a strange sound. His bicycle wobbles and he nearly falls off. He examines his front wheel. There's a piece of broken glass in the tire. Oh no, I don't want to be late, he thinks. Not today. At 8:25, Joseph finally pushes his bike through the school gates. A small group of students are looking at him. Who's that? One asks. I don't know. He looks like a new boy. He's got a really old bike. They laugh. Then a bell rings. Hurry up, one of them says, a tall, fair-haired boy. Lessons start in a few minutes. The friends run into the school entrance. Joseph stands alone in the playground. He looks up at the building and feels very small and nervous. He doesn't want to go in. He wants to go home, but he has no choice. The first lesson is history. Mr. Andrews, the teacher, talks about British kings and queens, but Joseph doesn't know the names. Mr. Andrews speaks quickly too, and it's hard for Joseph to follow him. Suddenly, he asks Joseph a question, and Joseph doesn't understand it. The fair-haired boy says something, and some students laugh. Stop talking, Lucas, says Mr. Andrews. Okay, sir, says Lucas, smiling. Mr. Andrews repeats the question, but Joseph still doesn't know what to say. Don't worry, Joseph. I know. It's one of Joseph's favourite subjects. Then English. The class read a play out loud. End English. The class read a play out loud. Joseph tries to follow it, but it's difficult. In the end, he just listens to the sounds. His eyes move to the window. Outside, a wind is blowing the leaves from the trees, and some clouds are racing across the sky. He watches them come and go. After a horrible lunch, Joseph walks around the playing field. Students are standing in groups, chatting and looking at their phones. Some of them are playing football. He checks his phone. There's a message from his sister, Rebecca. How's your new school? Hope you're having a great day. He can't tell her the truth. All okay, he texts. But it isn't. The bell rings in the distance. It isn't okay at all. Bonjour Joseph, bienvenue à la leçon. Comment ça va? Très bien, merci, says Joseph. Lucas stops drawing in his exercise book and looks up. He sees the new boy sitting at the front of the class. He is having a conversation with Ms. Piot, the French teacher. Ms. Piot really is French, and she isn't talking to him the way she normally talks to the class. They are talking the way people talk in their own language. Then the new boy smiles and they both laugh. Maxie puts up her hand. Yes, Maxie, says Ms. Piot. Miss, what are you talking about? We're talking about Joseph's first weeks here in the UK. Is he from France, miss? Asks Lucas. No, Lucas. French is his second language. You can ask him some questions. Okay, Joseph? Oui, says Joseph. Where are you from, Joseph? Asks Lucas. Thank you, Lucas, but this time ask your question in French. The last lesson of the day is geography. Joseph loves learning about places, countries, cities, towns and villages, rivers, mountains and deserts. Today, I want you to work in pairs and make a project about one of the world's great rivers, says Mr. Weller. The class start moving into pairs. Joseph doesn't have anyone to work with. Lucas, can you work with Joseph, please? Lucas gets up and sits next to Joseph. I don't know anything about the world's great rivers, he says. Don't worry, says Joseph. I can help you. At the end of the lesson, Mr. Weller looks at their project on the Congo River. Well done, boys. That's fantastic. Thank you, sir, says Lucas. Joseph is pushing his bicycle across the playground when he hears a familiar voice. Hey, Joseph! He turns. Have you got a problem with your bike? Yes. Do you want a hand? Sorry? Can I help you fix your bike? Asks Lucas. What? Oh, yes, please, says Joseph. Come on then. I love fixing bikes. Lucas bends down and studies the wheel. Yes, thinks Joseph. I can send a new text to my sister now. Everything really is okay.
Page 143. Exercise 4.
A Viking Hero by Martin Hobbs. It was dark. It was cold. It was difficult to breathe. Agatha sat under her cloak. She had pains in her legs and her back. She couldn't feel her feet because they were frozen. All around her were large wooden barrels and, from the strong smell, it was clear they contained salt fish. She tried to think of warm things, of hot drinks, of her bed at home under heavy blankets. She thought of the fire in the middle of the room and remembered her grandfather with his long white beard. Every night he told her stories, fantastic stories, of heroes and ships and voyages to the edge of the world. He told her about savage monsters, terrifying dragons, and fights to the death. Her grandfather filled her head with the adventures of Eric the Red, Ivar the Boneless, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, and many others. When he finally blew out the candles and she lay in her bed, she couldn't sleep. She thought of the long ships and their great journeys, and she thought of the fact that she was a girl, and girls didn't go to sea. That's why, in the middle of the night, Agatha got dressed, put on her hat, grabbed her cloak, and crept silently to the door. She took a last look at her grandfather, sound asleep under his big fur cloak. "Goodbye, Grandad," she said softly. Then she closed the door and ran across the wet grass down towards the sea and a waiting longship. In 5 minutes she was on board. There was nobody there. She quickly found a place to hide, pulled her cloak over her head, and waited for the morning. Agatha sat in the darkness and listened to the sound of the sea and the wind in the big sail. She could hear the crew, too, snoring in their sleep. After more than 24 hours on the ship, she felt terrible. "I can't stay here any longer," she decided. Agatha lifted her cloak and stood up. The sea air hit her in the face. It was sharp and cold and wonderful. She looked at the sleeping sailors. Then she saw the lookout. He stood by the mast, his head bent forwards. Was he asleep? That was wrong. The lookout was the most important man on the ship. But then she looked at the sea and she was happy. This was her first voyage on a ship. The full moon shone in the night sky and painted the sea with silver light. It was so beautiful. It was so... What was that? Agatha saw a dark shape in the water. It was there for a moment, then it disappeared. She turned to the lookout. He didn't see a thing. Now she was sure the man was not awake. Then she heard a loud, strange sound. The sea suddenly seemed higher. The longship rocked from side to side. And then, again, a dark shape came to the surface of the sea. She saw its great shining eye, and Agatha screamed.
"What are you doing on my ship?"
The captain shouted at her. He was angry. She could see his red face in the moonlight, and his red hair and thick red beard. His men stood behind him. "I wanted..." She couldn't find her voice. She felt small and scared. But then she thought of Eric the Red and the great heroes of the past, and she said, "I wanted to go on a sea voyage. I wanted to be a Viking sailor."
"A Viking sailor?"
the captain said.
"Vikings don't scream like girls."
His men laughed. Agatha was angry. "I saw a sea monster," she said. "It was gigantic."
"Did you see it?"
the captain asked the lookout, a pale, thin man.
There was no monster,
The man said.
the girl is a dreamer.
"That isn't true," said Agatha. "You didn't see it because you were asleep."
Be quiet, girl.
The captain said. Then he shouted,
Turn the ship around. We can't sail with a child on board.
"Wait!" shouted Agatha. She pointed at the sea behind them. "Look!" It was the sea monster. They saw its dark back shining in the moonlight. Then it rose up out of the water and climbed higher and higher. It was like a hill. It was like a mountain. Then it fell forwards and crashed into the sea. Huge waves hit the side of the ship. Men fell to the deck.
Get up!
Shouted the captain.
To your oars! To your oars!
The men grabbed their oars and rowed with all their strength. The sun rose above the edge of the world and climbed into the blue sky. The long ship sailed across the calm water. The men sat with their oars, tired but safe.
Let's eat,
the captain said. He took some bread and salt fish and gave it to Agatha. She thanked him, then ate hungrily.
Well, men,
he said,
let's say welcome to the new member of our crew. She saved our lives.
His crew, including the lookout, cheered and shouted, Agatha! Agatha! And Agatha smiled.
Page 145. Exercise 4.
Dreamtime by Martin Hobbs. It was 5 o'clock on Friday, the end of my last class. Bye, guys.
Bye, Jordan. Have a great holiday.
You too. I turned off the virtual university. My friends and the classroom disappeared. I saw my small bedroom again and heard our home music. I went downstairs to the kitchen.
Nice class?
My mom asked. Yes, thanks, I replied. I poured a glass of water, then walked into our small square garden. It was the 13th August, and the sky was a perfect blue. Summer days were always perfect. Later in the year, artificial clouds floated above the city and produced rain. On 25th December, it snowed. It always snowed because people loved waking to see the world dressed in white. The air dome always produced the right weather for the right time of year. I sat in a deck chair, put on a pair of sunglasses, and drank my water. I felt tired and had a bit of a headache. I had to take a decision, and I only had one more day to think about it. On 14th August at 12 p.m. precisely, the summer holiday began. For 2 weeks, everybody went on vacation, and the city fell silent. It was dream time. But this year was different. I had a problem. I didn't want to go.
Jordan?
My dad looked down at me. He had a smooth face and short brown hair. He looked years younger than 45, but that face wasn't happy.
What are you wearing?
He asked. Just a pair of sunglasses.
Why are you wearing them? You don't need them. Not in the air dome. The light is perfectly controlled.
I like them, I said.
Where did you get them?
He asked. I bought them at Johnny's retro shop, I said. You know, from Johnny. In person.
I hate you shopping
At that place, he said.
It isn't right.
Sorry, I said. I didn't want an argument, not about a silly thing like sunglasses. I had a much bigger problem, and my dad knew what it was.
Well, Jordan, where are you going on holiday this year?
He asked. Sure.
Why do you always leave things to the last moment?
You have to decide soon.
My mom said. She stood next to my dad.
You only have another few hours,
he said. I know. I'm thinking. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, my parents were still there. Where are you going to go? I asked.
I'm going on a space cruise,
said my mom.
I'm traveling to the Illuminator system. There are some beautiful planets there.
What about you, Dad?
I'm going back to ancient Rome, the time of the Emperor Augustus. I think it will be very interesting.
That sounds nice, I said. I didn't mean it, but I had to say something.
Well, I'm going to prepare dinner. It will be on the table in 5 minutes,
Mom said, then went back into the house.
There are thousands and thousands of holiday opportunities,
Dad said. Don't worry, I replied. I'll decide this evening. But I decided sooner. In fact, I decided at exactly that moment. And I was scared. It was 11:55. We sat down in our dream chairs.
So, where are you going on holiday?
Asked Dad. To the Mars Fantasy Park, I said.
Have a happy holiday, darling,
said Mom.
Yes, have a good time,
said Dad. I smiled. Then we put on our dream hats and took our dream pills, and I waved them goodbye. My parents closed their eyes. I waited, then took the pill from my mouth. I stood up, kissed them both goodbye, and left the room. I walked through the empty streets. All over the city, people were now on their annual holiday. I looked for police planes, for home security men, but didn't see a thing. I really was alone. At Johnny's retro shop, I wrote a message and stuck it on the window. Johnny, I have your motorbike. I'll bring it back soon. Jordan. I loved that motorbike. It was over 100 years old, but it still worked. I started the engine, put on my sunglasses, and rode away. Five hours later, the city came to an end. After the last buildings, there was an empty space. And in the distance, across that space, I saw the edge of the air dome. I rode towards that silver wall. I went faster and faster. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I left the dome. First, I saw the ruins of buildings, old factories, dead earth. But then, slowly, the world changed color. I saw weeds, grass, trees. I saw flowers. And the sky, the real sky, was bright and heavy with clouds. The air felt wild, felt fresh. I stopped and looked around. This was a strange new world. Was it beautiful? I wasn't sure. Then I smelled a strange smell, and I heard a sound, a new sound, low and regular. I left the motorbike and walked across a field. The sound grew louder. The sun broke through the clouds. And suddenly, I saw something moving. Something huge and blue. It was amazing. Terrifying. Fantastic. It was the ocean.